Okay, welcome people to our family exchange for the month of January. It feels like a day since we've met. Actually, it has been. We haven't been here since October, so I'm really glad to have you all join us for this great discussion. The family exchange is being recorded, just so you know, and will be available later, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's see. We have to, as part of our session, we must provide you with a disclaimer. And this presentation was prepared by NTAC under a cooperative agreement from SAMHSA. While this event is supported by SAMHSA, the contents are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of SAMHSA, HHS, or the US government. While we hope there are not any security issues that happen today, in the event any may occur, this session will immediately end and you'll be notified by an email to rejoin a new session. And we want to thank you again for attending one of the NTAC sessions. Listed here are all of our incredible national partners that have come together to utilize their expertise in their subject matter knowledge and to help inform the field by creating products, resources, and sessions like this one to enhance the behavioral and mental health fields. As a center, our vision is that all children, youth, and families living with and impacted by mental health challenges will have access to the resources and opportunities they need to thrive in a comprehensive and equitable system of care. We serve a wide cross-sector of audience, including everyone from state leaders to providers to school workforce, infant and early childhood providers, community-based providers, peer supervisors, family partners, youth partners, and much more. Our services range from individual consultation to more in-depth sessions like this one, and the peer learning exchanges and tools to help you. Our aim is to really create those outlets for communication, collaboration, and resource sharing amongst all of us. Please also make sure to check out all of our resources and archived presentations on our website, or go to the Contact Us link there to request consultation and training. And we'll put the NTAC webs on the chat. I haven't even opened my chat box yet, but I'm sure it's there. So a couple of things before we get started. You will receive, these are questions that are often asked, and so you will receive a certificate of completion. Bridget will be sending that out to you, and that is her email address right there, so you know who to get it from. You can get a copy of this presentation if it was useful for you, and it will be resent in a couple of days, within 2 business days. Can you get a copy of this recording, and it will be available at this website. And when you get these slides, you'll have these links that you can go to find them. So we're so grateful to have Ashley Singleton with us today, and she's been the driving force behind mental wellness in January and the subject of all of the Wednesday mental wellness subjects. And so I'm going to have her go over these slides because they're hers.
Aw, Lori. Hey there, everybody. I'm Ashley Singleton, and if you have participated in any of our mental wellness events or even open up a Wellness Wednesday newsletter, can you put a fire in the chat for me? I'd love to see how many people have been joining us this month. I see some fires going up. Just put a fire in the chat. Bridget, put a fire in the chat. Bridget, hey. So Tyra, Ashley Henderson, hey there. We're so glad that y'all have been joining us throughout this month. What's mental wellness is really important, and it really can mean so much to so many different people, like different things to different folks, right? And overall, it's about feeling good. But mental wellness, what it's not is it's not an absence of illness, right? If a person has been diagnosed with depression, wellness doesn't mean poof, that depression is gone. And it's the same thing about stress. Stress is going to come. Just being mentally well doesn't mean that stress is no longer in your life. Wellness is really about having a sense of purpose, enjoying your work and play, having fulfilling relationships, taking care of your body, whatever that might look like for you. And really overall, it's a feeling of being happy. And on the next slide, we'll see a couple of reasons why it's so important for mental wellness. And I'm not sure if Lori or Bridget, you all, who's the driving the car today, but if we could go to the next slide, we'll see a couple of reasons there about why mental wellness matters for the mental and behavioral health workforce. Number one, there is preventing burnout. When you prioritize mental wellness, it helps to prevent burnout. It helps to promote professional and personal growth. When you are prioritizing mental wellness, you're more open to learning and adapting new strategies in your work or just in your life. It allows you to be more connected to the people and the communities that you serve. But what's really a big one for me is the ability of mental wellness to help promote and model healthy behaviors. So the next child or family that you work with, if they see you practicing maybe some mental wellness exercises or journaling, that may encourage them to also prioritize mental wellness. So there are lots of benefits to mental wellness. I think on the next slide, or maybe we're going to have it in the chat, we share with you all the wellness journal. Earlier this week, we did a vision board session where there were lots of different exercises that helps guide us through this path of mental wellness. So Lori, I don't know if that's on the next slide or
No, it's not on the next slide, actually. It's in the chat, and it's also at the end of our presentation included with our resource page.
Fantastic. Awesome. So thanks so much for having me here today, and thank you all for prioritizing your wellness. It's really important. And Lori, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much. You do great work, and I'm so honored to work with you. So welcome to today's session. This is a session I've been looking forward to for a long time. It's unlocking the power of fatherhood and elevating mental wellness in families. Our presenters today are men with lived experience and a lot of experience helping other families engage with their fathers, engage fathers in their care. So I want to go over a little bit about our agenda, then I'm going to do the introductions to them. So we've had our welcome. Our introductions will be when we introduce them. We're going to go over a few slides that are included with our prepared question and answers. And then we want to really open this up for discussion with all of you. I know you all have questions about engaging fathers and the power of fatherhood, and I want you to feel free to open up and enjoy or involve yourself in this discussion and make sure that you get some of your questions asked. And then we'll talk a little bit about next month's family exchange. So today we have with us George Fleming, who is a fatherhood consultant in Pennsylvania and has been doing it for, and I'll let you say how many years, George, because I don't know for sure. And Edward Casillas from Arizona, who also is a fatherhood consultant and has run fatherhood programs down for the family-run organization in Arizona. So George, let's start with you if you want to introduce yourself.
Certainly. Greetings, everyone, from cold Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So great to be with you, Lori. I thank you for your diligent work in this area of fatherhood engagement. Um, I currently I switched jobs since the last time I was on this. I was working for a mental health peer organization in Allegheny County called Allegheny Family Network. I currently work as a manager of a men's homeless shelter on the north side of Pittsburgh. I have been working in the human service field for 43 years. The last 20 of those have been delegated to father engagement, working with families in various diasporas, but certainly not excluded from mental health, which was the last job that I held as a father supervisor in that department.
Thank you. Edward, you want to go? Say who you are?
Sure. So hello, everyone. I'm in Tucson, Arizona, and it is 74 degrees here. It's actually a really
Don't
nice
rub it in,
day.
Edward. Don't
Yeah,
rub it in.
don't rub it
Don't
in.
rub it in.
I'm so sorry for everyone else, but come visit Arizona if you get a chance. Yeah. But first and foremost, I'm a proud father of 3 children and a proud grandfather of 2 grandchildren. I have a 2.5-year-old little granddaughter, and my grandson is a 1.5 years, and I just love them dearly. I love being a father. And I'm also a program manager for a Dad Together program here in Arizona, in the state of Arizona. I've been running this for about going on our 3rd year now. I've been working with men and fathers for a little over 13 years now. And before that, I was working with men in recovery, dealing with mental health and substance abuse issues. And I think really today what I want to be is I just want to be open and transparent as a father, but also as a professional, and what I've seen and heard from the struggles that fathers have presented to me, and what we've done to address their mental health and where they're at, and to strengthen them for themselves first and then for their children. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for both of you being here. The first part of our presentation today is to cover some prepared questions, and we have a couple of slides to go with each question, and we'll just go to that point and let George and Edward answer those questions, and then we'll open it up for everyone else. I will be reviewing the chat as we go through this. If there are any things that come up, I'll be happy to forward those or voice those out for you, or if you want to open up your mic, you're welcome to ask the questions yourself. So let's just get started with the questions. And the first one that we asked was, how does mental wellness impact fatherhood engagement? And we have a couple of slides. I'll let you go first, George.
Well, thank you, Lori, once again. I can say I forgot to mention I'm a father of 4 grown children and 16 grandkids and 2 great grandkids.
Wow.
That's great. That's awesome.
Thank you. When fathers of preschool age children, and I'm not going to read a lot of these, I just want to kind of get us going, ages 3 to 5, and I do a lot of work with Healthy Head Start these days, which concentrates on kids 0 to 3 and mental wellness, are more involved with their children. The fathers have lower rates of depression. There's various thoughts, reasons, and research around this, a lot more to be done. But what I can say, based on my experiences as a father and a grandfather, there's no more joy than the interacting of a child at this age when they do different things on different days, and you can see the unconditional love. I think that's one of the major reasons why fathers are so important, and why I continue to advocate for fathers to be involved in their children's lives, no matter what. A lot of fathers I see, particularly when I worked in my last job, 80+% of our fathers came from Children, Youth, and Families, which is our county government agency that looks out for the child welfare system, which included a lot of non-residential fathers who are highly involved with their children in early childhood, ages 1 to 3. They experience lower rates, and this is excluding the problems that they still, or barriers that they have, of depression, than their peers, their children that as they get older. And again, some of the research is listed below, but a lot of things I like to talk about is my practical experience and my lived experience, as Lori said, and I can say in all honesty, I just talked to my youngest son about having his soon-to-be 6 months daughter, his first, over here on the weekend, and just for me to hold her, because I can say for a fact that that exchange, father, grandfather, to children in this age really gives them a sense of purpose, which I read early on around wellness, and gives the child a sense of bonding that is crucial to their wellness and development.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the times when we talk about bonding and attachment from a young age for a child, we talk about mom, and it's true that there needs to be this bond and attachment, but there's also the father. There needs to be that bond and attachment. And I know as a father myself, I was just ecstatic to hold my baby, and same thing with my grandchildren as well. We don't talk a lot about that, but that bond and attachment between father and child is extremely important at a very young age, not only for the child, but for the father. And so I've met a lot of fathers that were separated from their children, brand new children, maybe 6 months old, maybe even younger, and they're depressed. They're depressed because they don't have access to their child, and they need that bond and attachment. They need to have that grow. And George is absolutely right when it comes to like a sense of purpose with fathers and grandfathers. When children are able to have that, there's a sense of belonging. There's a sense of identity that comes with that, and it's beneficial not only for the child, for the father, but also for the whole family when we're able to recognize that and give space for that with the fathers.
I'll go to the next slide.
Sure.
George, if you want to go first, did you already cover this information?
Well, yes and no, but just for the sake of our audience, I just want to kind of point out a couple of things. When the children are very young, involved in non-resident fathers, they experience higher rates of depression. We talked about this, but one of the things that Ed mentioned is this sense of bonding and nurturing being both for mothers and fathers for a long time, particularly 30, 40 years ago. And even when I grew up, the roles was pretty segregated by gender. We now know that certainly that's not the case. We have all different type of families makeups. But what we want to advocate for, and what I'm sure Ed would agree with, is whenever there's a child, there's a father somewhere. I've said that, and I'll continue to say that. So what we're advocating for is for that father to be a part of that child's life, in spite of the dynamics, his issues, and or his struggles. The reason I say that is on the next slide, it points out this issue of satisfaction and fulfillment. I don't think, this is personal, but I don't think there's a greater assignment that a man can have, and that's to be a father. I'm a very spiritual person as well, so I see that in a very universal way. And I also see the damage, and I see this constantly in my work, where children have these fatherhood wounds that start very on, sometime in utero, and they never outgrow them. The time does not heal the wound of an absent father. And so why we're doing this is so significant to the wellness of our children. Even when you do the research, when fathers read to the kids in utero, and when they're connected to the mother in a healthy way, that child has much less risk factors and higher resiliency, even at a very young age.
Definitely.
Okay.
I'd like to share a little something about my own personal experience as a little boy, my relationship with my biological father. He went to Vietnam at a very young age. I think he got to see me in the hospital before he left. But when he came back, of course, that was a horrible place. He had some trauma. And so what should have been coming home and bonding with, his son, he was dealing with all of these other issues that led to depression and anxiety and all of those things. And so as a little boy, there was this division, or there wasn't this strong attachment. I knew he loved me, but I grew up with that and seeing the effects of his mental health and not being well, and growing through his trauma and trying to get help and all of that. And that really, as a little boy, it affected me into my teenage years, into my young adulthood, and kind of passed down in a way, and I needed to really work on that as a father, so I didn't pass that down to my children. But it's so important that we look at fathers, that everyone has a story. Every father has a story, and what was their relationship like with their father? Because we're talking about generational things here. And I love hearing George's story about holding, the 6-month-old baby and all of that. That is so touching, right? Because he's able to pass down that love all the way down to his grandchildren. And so I think really it's like fathers have a history, they have a story. And so a lot of the times we look at fathers and we might just say, suck it up, right? Just push forward, just deal with it. But they're not dealing with it. They might just be stuffing it down. And so it's really important that we support fathers to address that so they're not passing it down to their children.
Very good. Thank you so much. We'll move on to the second question, which is research tells us the important role that a father plays in a child's life, yet we often don't engage and sometimes even ignore fathers when they are working with families. Why do you think this happens? And I'll go to the next slide, George, so you can go there.
Well, I'm sure Ed, even though he's across the country here in a much warmer climate, one of the things I can say in my travels is the themes are the same, and these are the things that's highlighted here.
Absolutely.
Policy, and there's two issues that I see a lot that create these artificial barriers, but they're real. One is policy, and two is practice. Policy is the things that are written within the confines of different organizations, particularly in the mental health and mental wellness and human service field. And so many organizations, and I'm saying this based on experience, and they'll admit this historically when they talk about providing services, they're talking about mother and children. I see this as recent as this morning. My niece calls and she works for an organization that primarily caters to women and children, a healthy head start. And she had a homeless mother who has two twins. They're 4 years old, and she's 7 months pregnant, and she is displaced because of intimate partner violence. Now, I wear 2 or 3 different hats. I also provide services to men that cause harm, or as the old term was, batterers. And I've been doing that for 6 years as a facilitator. But here's one of the things that I found out, and I'll move on quickly to this, but this is important, that the majority of men that harm other people have been either harmed, neglected, or abandoned. That is not an excuse, but that is a significant factor. And so the other thing that I see, and a big part of what I've been advocating for, is if it's not intentional, it doesn't happen. And one of the things that's happened statewide that I've been involved with for 8 years is we started off trying to create a bill, which we did, got it, and it took 8 years, got it into an act. And now it's kind of stagnant, getting something behind the act so that the act can become or turn into services across Western Pennsylvania. But at least we were intentional to try to address it at that level. Training should happen all across the board. And I also want to say sometimes fathers need to know how to engage each other. So peer support is critical in this work. The other piece is if you have had, and I understand this because I've worked with plenty of women in my life, an abusive, neglected father, sometimes your images or the glass that you look through can be half empty. And I do understand that. However, all of us have some type of trauma in our lives simply because we're living. And therefore, we have to examine within our own psyche, what and how do I view the roles of fathers? And I can tell you by presenting to hundreds and hundreds of women over the last 10, 15 years, that a lot of them will come to me and say, well, you're right. The reason I don't think about a lot of these dads is because my dad wasn't there for me. And so I don't see what the use is. Or I've been told I don't have the time. I got to more worry about women and the kids. And the other thing is culture. We live in a culture that really sees men often as second-class supporters. Now, let me say this. Ed nor myself is not advocating for men only. We're advocating for 2 parents. But we want those parents to have the same equitable playground, or landscape, should I say, to be involved. Policy, unintentionality, lack of training, and indifference are the things that keep fathers on the back burner in systems in which we promote sometimes because we don't speak up and say anything about them. So help us become ambassadors, please.
Yeah, I totally agree with George on everything that he said, and it is true. With my other colleagues throughout the nation, fathers are facing the same things everywhere, and it is culture, it is policy. We do need to be intentional when we're working with fathers, and George touched on it. It really comes down to bias. Do we have a bias against fathers? We may not even know about it, but it might be because of an unhealthy relationship you had with your father. Because if that's affecting you on your lens and how you're seeing fathers, how are you going to give them your best? And what we are advocating for is children, right? And we know children do better with moms and dads. And so we need to change, I'm going to say as a nation, we need to change our mindset to looking at fathers as just as important as mothers. And when we do that, we're going to start seeing some of those data and statistics, all of those negative numbers that you see about fathers not being involved. We're going to see those numbers change. But it takes time. It takes time and a lot of self-reflection of how are we intentionally working with fathers. And we need to move from, asking mom about dad. I mean, it's okay to have those questions, but that shouldn't be the middle person, so to speak, right? We need to talk directly to father and see how he's doing. Ask him, what his needs are, and ask him about the strengths in his family. I think being strength-based when you're working with fathers is huge, because me as a father, I'm going to pick up on that. If you genuinely care about me and my family, I'm going to work with you. I'm going to partner with you in that. But I think that it really does come down to all these things that George was talking about. But we need to be really intentional with working with fathers.
Very good. Thank you. That lit a fire in our little chat box. That question. And one from Kyle Delaney said, as much as I love being a father, I believe in policy and practice eliminating the use of mother or father and substituting it with parent is the path to equal parents. Another one said, men have been placed in a less than position by society and women in general. And finally, you hit the nail on the head. Our culture is a major factor in 2024. So thank you for all of your answers to those questions. Let's see, let's go to I have a couple more messages here I didn't get to see. Sure. So my organization has tried several times to include fathers, but they do not engage with us. We have offered affinity groups led by fathers, but still no response. Any suggestions?
Do you want to suggest now, or do you want to do that under question and answer, Lori? That's up to you.
Okay, let's go to the next questions, and then I'll come back to this when we open it up.
We'll stick a pin in that. It's a good question. We get asked that every time we do this, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is, I had it there. Sometimes we unintentionally erect barriers in the process in staff training that keep us from effectively engaging fathers. From your perspective and experience, what are some of these barriers and how can we break them down?
The biggest one is stereotypes.
Yeah.
Even from TV and places as far back as me being young and seeing men in very barbaric or over toxic relationships in terms of their masculinity. These roles we develop as not caretakers, but providers only. And this concept that if you're not providing, you're a deadbeat. There's language that we use to identify fathers that are struggling other than the word challenge. We use names like deadbeat. One of the terrible things that I've heard people say to me is that they're nothing but sperm donors. When you start looking at this degrading type of conversation towards us as human beings, that's a real huge barrier. And those barriers are psychological. years ago, I was in a training at the state level, and I heard a woman say something that I'll never forget. She stood up in the middle of the training and said, I'm a woman, but I do want to say this because I work in the business. She said, nothing will change until it changes. And she said, what I mean by that, until we see both of them, as somebody said, as parents, both need to be involved and held accountable and supported. And until we change our mindsets about the system at large, we'll create these barriers, even if we don't know that they're there. And I concur, that's still going on as I speak right now. I don't want to get into it deep, but race has a major issue platform in this. And I did some research one time on the number of people that lost their rights that had the same issues, and overwhelmingly African-American men, given the same circumstances, particularly as a white man, lost his children or lost his rights, where another was given a greater opportunity for resources and or another chance. So this is another thing that I think our world really don't do good at, and that's talking about systemic racism and how that plays out in the court system, particularly. If 80% of the men that's in jail are fathers, and any given day, 80% of them are people of color, that in itself speaks to something.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen those statistics too. And those things need to change because it is kind of on a system level. And it does really go back to that stereotype, right? Of what we see on news, TV shows, whatever, and what we've seen over decades. Fathers just haven't been known as equal when it comes to parenting. They're only the providers. They're a child support check. All of those negative things. A sperm donor. I've heard that one too. Deadbeat dad all the time. We have been hearing that for decades. All of those things. So that has affected our mindset. So in order to change that mindset, I believe people like George and myself and others, supporting fathers, being good role models, showing the effectiveness in supporting fathers, that slowly but surely changes the mindset. But I will say this, when it comes to agencies and systems, we have to be consistent. A lot of the times there's fatherhood programs, or there's a workshop and it's kind of a one and done, and oh, that was really good stuff. We need to keep following it up. We need to be consistent and committed to supporting fathers in their roles in children's lives. And that's what I've seen in agencies. There's a champion for fatherhood that wants to do a fatherhood program. You have to support your supervisors and your supervisors all the way up to the board, consistently having meetings with them, encouraging them to engage with fathers, showing them the effectiveness of the program itself.
Very good. There's another slide that talks about some of this. I'll let you go over that.
Yeah. One time I was in a training, and there was a researcher from the major campus of Penn State, where my daughter at the time was in undergrad. And after the in-service that I did on father engagement, I asked him, I sat down beside him at lunch, and I said, I want to just ask you a question from your vantage point as a seasoned researcher. Why isn't there ongoing latitudinal research over years as it pertains to fatherhood, whether it's bad, different, or bad, good, or indifferent, so that the system could be better driven by data versus assumption? And he looked me right in the face and he said, I know you care greatly about this. There's no money in fatherhood work. Never forget that. And I can say honestly, if you look at most budgets, including even mine's now, that's a multi-million-dollar one, a lot of these men that I serve daily, and there's 60 of them every night, they come and go. They got a tremendous amount of issues and hopelessness, but a lot of them are fathers. And that means that their kids somewhere are without them. Now, you multiply that in the millions. It is estimated that on any given day, between 17 million, and I think that's low because more and more of non-residential fathers get involved in the system, and I don't know how they come up with these census, but let's just say that as a marker. That in the African American boils down sometimes to 1 in every 4 child is born without a father present or engaged in the situation. It's an extremely high number. By the way, it's the highest out of all the demographics. So we need more data to back some of these things up. Different populations, as we continue to have a larger immigration, and we know this is a big political issue. You notice that a lot of them people treading through the water are men with their kids. I pay attention to things like that. Whether English-speaking immigrants or not, I'm not here to speak politics. I'm here to speak fatherhood. But we don't do research on things like that. Why is it that in the African-American community, the numbers are higher? And can we look at and be honest about it? And then the other thing is we need more research and more people and larger institutions that get millions of dollars. Pittsburgh has some of the largest institutions, good ones. We got Carnegie Mellon, we got Duquesne, and we got University of Pittsburgh. We got more hospitals. It's the largest employer in Western Pennsylvania now, yet it's hard pressed to find any of those hospitals doing research on fathers, even as pertains to them from the paternal when they're born. I want to say this too. There's a new program out now from the county. Now listen to this, that if a mother is born and she's considered to be at risk, whatever that means, and normally that means income and race and education, she is offered services shortly after the baby is delivered. Now, I was in on this process. They came to meet with me and my men to talk about how they can make it father friendly. Well, 2 years later, they came out with this, and they're now doing this as a system-wide approach. And I asked this question. I said, so if I'm dad sitting in the room with mom and baby is present or may not be present, would I be offered the services with the mother? And they said, no. And I said, oh, maybe I said that wrong. They said, no, we heard you, but this is for the mothers and the kids. This is the type of stuff I'm talking about. This blatant discrimination based on assumption or gender or practice. And this is why we need more research, because if you look long term, these type of fathers that never do get engaged are the same kind of fathers that wind up despondent, feeling helpless and hopeless when it comes to their kids. And then their kids enter into these risk factors that are widely publicized. And now they're in the system. And somebody put in the thing generational? Absolutely. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little something with that. You know, when we're talking about data, the data that we have now is more responsible fathering data, right? What is the dad doing? Is he working? Is he paying? Is it all of this stuff is on the father? But the data, I believe, really needs to switch to supportive fathering data. What are we doing as a society and a community to support fathers just as much as we are mothers? And I want to say this about mothers too. I love my mom. That's my closest person in my entire life. I know how important she is. I know how important mothers are. So it's not either or. And I think that's also the mindset a lot of the times. It's either or, but it's really not. We want the best for children. We want the best for both parents. And so now is that time. But really the data, when you look at it, it's all about, you know, fathers not being involved and fathers this and that. And it's all about what he's doing. But what are we doing to support fathers? And when we start doing that, we're going to start seeing that data be more positive numbers and see that effects on children's lives. I was just thinking about that. A lot of the times, and I was working with Dr. Justin Hardy here in Arizona, and he works with fathers. And that was something that he is trying to work on, is moving from that research on just what fathers doing, but to what we are doing to support fathers.
Very good. Anything else, George, on this slide?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there's been a lot of really great comments, but they're long in the comments. So I hope you two get a chance to read that. And I'd be happy to share it with you after it's over as well.
That would be beneficial.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So our last prepared question is, please share some of the strategies that you've found effective in engaging fathers at all levels, in working with families, in programs, and in the field of parent peer support.
NFI, National Fatherhood Initiative, has this, and I'll talk about this last with Ed, but I can tell you what I've done that's practical to answer some of the questions that I'm sure is in the chat, because they pretty much are consistent without me looking at them. When I started really focusing on this was 31 years ago, which is my youngest child, my only daughter's age now, and she's a mother. I took her to a wellness visit, and her brother, who's 2 years apart from her, was with me because I had a more flexible schedule than my wife at the time. And when I walked to the desk, and the lady slid back the glass, and her first question was, "Do you have the same insurance?" So that hasn't changed. For a father who says no, that's a whole nother barrier. But I happened to have it. And so after I handed it to her and she did what she did, then she said to me, "Oh, is mom, where's mom? Is mom off today?" Or was mom something like that. And I said to her, at first it hit me like, what? So then it dawned on me that, one, the expectation that a father would be bringing a 6-month-old daughter for a wellness visit, his daughter, biological daughter, was foreign to her. And number two, seeing an African-American male do it was really foreign. Because I said to her, "Why did you ask me that?" And then she could realize what she had asked me. So then she backed up and said, "Oh, no. I was just wondering." I said, "Where are you now?" And when I went and sat down and waited for the pediatrician to come out, that thing bothered me. And it still does now. And what I did was took that, turned it into passion, and made it advocacy work. So many human service programs historically have not fully engaged fathers services, yet fathers often want to be involved. Now, let me say how we did it, because I think this is crucial. The first thing is the NFI has this fatherhood friendly checklist. You can print it out for yourself. It's several pages. And I think this is important because Ed alluded to this. When you listen to anything regarding to politics or any social media or anything, there's all kind of goofy stuff out there that is important, but you very seldom hear any presidency candidate, governor, anybody else talking about, "My state is going to become father friendly if I win." Now, you listen for yourself. The last person that did anything about this was Barack. I'm not saying it because he was black, I'm saying it because it's true. And he did something called the Father's Keepers.
Yeah, he did.
Right? Okay. Now,
he did.
you can go back and look and see if any of them ever mentioned it. The answer is no. I can answer that. And so that can help you gauge where you're. And if you don't have the buy-in from the very top down, and you have a department that's trying to work with it, Ed is blessed because he can call some shots, get his own funding, and he can push that agenda. But most of the organizations I work for, and I have to be honest, in Pittsburgh, 95% of them are ran by women. Thank God for that. There's not a lot of men, particularly black men, even coming in the field no more. I'm a dinosaur. So one of the problems is how we engage men from the top down. Number two is, what is the atmosphere like that we bring them into to screen them? We did it in their homes. Number three, we count numbers and then they attach numbers to funding instead of attaching money to the cause, which means we're not tracking numbers, we're tracking impact of the ones we do meet and engage. And I will say this, it is extremely difficult to engage men because they're disenfranchised. A lot of men are, even though they're involved with their kids, they're disenfranchised. Or you got those of us that are not looking for no plugs because we're only doing what we're supposed to do, and that's take care of our offspring. The other thing is the organization has to be very intentional in publicizing and not being afraid to say, we advocate for both parents, but we intentionally want to work with more fathers, and we will put resources behind it to do that. And then you have to have trained men that are what I call father magnets. Just because a man is a father doesn't mean he's a father magnet. You got to be very particular about the men that you choose to work with to try to engage men. And then certainly last but not least, put the resources behind it to do so. And I guarantee you, that you'll get some outcomes. I want to finish this part and then kick it to Ed. I have a small contract with Healthy Start Family Foundation, and I was on a spiritual retreat for trauma of my own over the weekend, and I had to go do a Zoom. There was one man on. The last time I did a group, there was 2 men on. I prepared for that like I had 100 of them, just like I did for this. And what I'm saying is the one young man that was on was in his 30s. He had 4 girls. And so I'm reaching out to him because he can be a catalyst to get to a group that me as a grandfather, great-grandfather, probably won't reach. So peer support in culture, age, and commitment is critical to fatherhood engagement. So those are some strategies. Ed, you want to?
Yes, you touched on a lot of good things, and the NFI does provide some pretty good basic stuff on how to engage fathers. I'm going to say from the very beginning, choosing that father magnet. I love that saying, by the way. It's so true. You need to have a champion there. You need to have that father magnet to bring in the fathers. And I would say being transparent, being authentic. That is what I have seen. I'm a little vulnerable. I'll share a little bit about myself with the fathers. And then if the agency, do you have posters up on the wall? Just some simple like that. Do you have posters of fathers with their families and welcoming things like that? And also, if you're going to have a group or you're going to have something there, have something basic as food and a good amount of food. I think we've all heard donuts and dads and things like that. That works. But it's really that champion, that father magnet that doesn't give up and is consistent with his support of the fathers, but also educating others around him. So educating the staff and others on the importance of fathers. And then also, George, you talked about, not the quantitative data, but the qualitative data.
Yeah.
Hearing those success stories from other dads, they are moving. They really are. And that lights a fire with other people. And to see, hey, wow, talking about, I just read to my little boy, I'd never done that before, and he was so excited, and now I'm excited. That stuff catches on. It really does. And I think we need to share more about those positive stories.
Very good. You have one more slide here that talks about some of the ways you can do it in the program, organization, and system.
Yes, and this is also based on demographics and or some other things that you have to take into consideration. But key word here under programs is you have to tailor-make recruitment. It cannot be the same. Recruiting fathers is different than recruiting mothers. It's much different, and it takes a different type of approach. And those approach and methods is a whole nother training. But you want to think about the word tailor-made recruitment. Number 2, and I said this earlier, and Ed just said it, make the service environment inclusive from the door. So my niece who called me about the homeless mother last night, I have trained her, who works pretty much with all females, if not 100%. When you go in these homes with these young mothers and or mothers that are either pregnant or have these kids 0 to 3, I want to know where the father's at, because I will go after that father as a part of my contract with your organization to do so. When I leave here, I'm going over to a community to speak to parents, guarantee you it'll be 80-90% mothers, to why it's important to have their fathers involved in spite of what's going on between the two of them as the parents. So this environment is, and it has to be father friendly from the door. Number 3, some organizations have tangible means to meet fathers' needs. Most don't have a line item for practical things, but they'll have line items for practical things for women. If it's the same, no matter the gender, if there's a need that pertains to the betterment, welfare of the child, it shouldn't be based on mother or father. It should be based on, is this going to help the child's overall wellness? And some examples of that is money to help with rent subsidies or money to help with a stroller. I work with a lot of single fathers because of the fit nail thing. fentanyl and other drugs, we had to see an insurgent of mothers ODing and things. And sometimes both of them are drug addicts, but the mother died. So now you got the father to work with. And there's a lot of more fathers that are single. And my nephew is one because the mother died. And he's been overwhelmed for 8 years, and 2 of the kids have mental health. So just being father, know what the needs are is important. Then under organizations, you have to be committed. Most organizations might have 1 or 2 people and 40 or 50 others to work with men. The organization I was in, I had 50 people, but there was only 3 of us committed full time to work with men. And right now there's only 2 of them. All right. And enhanced staff supervision. This is something that has to be connected to somebody to understand fatherhood, and then identifying with other people that's doing it. One day I have a vision that Ed and I can do a conference somewhere in between Arizona and Pittsburgh, somewhere warmer, and really bring this into a larger scale in a hotel somewhere where we could really dive into this and have more pull-out groups where people can get to know each other, share resources, and really cross-pollinate our efforts across the world. And the other thing is we have to address these system barriers and not pretend like they don't exist. That's just the truth. And then places like Nana and others, be more and this is for Lori and them, be more intentional about we can help with TI resources when it comes to fatherhood engagement. How can we, organizations that do technical assistance, how can you help smaller organizations that struggle with money to do things, barely can get computers, to get computers, get trained up, and be able to understand the qualitative data that goes into TI work? So those are some of the things that I think we can do, both programmatically, organization, and system.
You know, I don't have much to add to that, but I will say, because he touched on everything, and we will, George, we will set something up like that.
We're gonna do the Ed. I'm telling you, every time I see you, I'm saying we got to do this bigger, man.
We're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, we will.
But I do want to say, you know, there's system issues, there's agency issues, there's culture issues, there's issues all around, you know, a fatherhood engagement. And I would just say, start where you are. If you are a case manager and you're, let's say, working with child welfare, then do your best in your position to be a good role model on what it means to work with fathers and be consistent with it. If you're in a place where you can change policies and procedures, push for that. Wherever you're at, political, if you can make system change because you have that kind of power, wherever you're at, let's all work together and make a difference where we can. That's just what comes to mind, because I think a lot of the times, you know, I wish there was a top 10 list. You do these top 10 and everything's going to change. It's just the world's not like that. And I really wish it was, because some things might work for you and it doesn't work for somebody else. But I think when we're all on the same page of, do we want the best for children? Then we want the best for fathers and mothers. I think we can make a change wherever we're at.
Awesome. You guys are so great. The couple of things that have been brought up in I'm just scrolling through chat, and I know I'm going to miss some things that are important, but it says, I agree and have worked to facilitate the involvement of both parents. Other people agree with you that it's important to have both parents there. This came to the question of, my organization has tried several times to include fathers, had trouble. Have you got any ideas on any suggestions on how to do that?
Look at the demographics in which you did your outreach, break them by zip code, culture, race, economics. Look at who's already, where are captive fathers at? Jail happens to be one. Pool halls, barbershops. Set up places where men come and go and feel safe. And then number 3, have community-based people. That's all they do. They go to all the events. They go to the parks. They go to the little league games. Where you want to recruit fathers, go to some of these little league football games. you'll get everything from the local drug dealer down to a feel-good dad. But you have to go places where men congregate. Football, sports are always places to go and connect with fathers in an informal way. If you use the data, do a little bit of research, your demographics, and have a father magnet and be consistent, you'll get some. And if you get some, you'll get others, because people come to where they see things happening at.
Very good.
I agree, and it really is about being consistent. And George, you could probably agree with this one. Is when you have support groups, sometimes you'll get a bunch of dads, and then after a while, it kind of fades away, and then you'll get a bunch of dads. And so, what a lot of times what happens with agencies is they kind of get sad about it, like, oh, we're not getting dads anymore, so they give up, and they just say, well, we tried it. But it's that consistency in providing that support, going out to the community, barbershops, all those other things that George was talking about. That's where we got to go. And you need to have that magnet out there, making their face known out in the community.
Let me also say this. Thank you, Ed. The Healthy Head Start, I recruited, because they only have like one male working in all the family support centers. I recruited the ladies that work for these family support organizations, and I call them fatherhood ambassadors, and I meet with them monthly, and I support them, encourage them, and very honest with them. And they are my advocates because they see the need. Now, most of their clients are the mothers, or if they're supervisors, they're supervisor people. So mothers most men that go to the doctor, it's usually their mothers and or their partners telling them to go. When men go do things that are healthy for them, it's usually somebody behind them helping them to get there and to do that because they care about them. So I'm also saying that you don't have to be a father to be an advocate. You don't have to be Black to help a Black person. You don't have to be white. You have to care. You have to have some passion and some skills and be tenacious, because you have to keep in mind, this is about the children. These adults are adults. They might have a rest of their kids, but every child that does not have a father pays a price. And the literature on that is like, I'll finish with this. It is estimated that it costs us $1 billion, and I think that's low, a year. This is a statistic 6 years old, to try to replace fathers. $1 billion. Do you know what Ed and I could do with a couple $1 million? You can keep the rest of it. Just give us a couple $1 million and we'll change from here to Arizona, because you need resources. Also, if you can pay men well to do this work, then they'll stick and stay. That's the other thing. You got to pay for quality. You pay for what you get.
That's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. So this last comment said, if fathers aren't responding to your outreach, it means they don't trust you. Got to build trust first, and this takes time, because you first have to overcome a lifetime of broken trust from social services.
Whoever said that, you can hire them.
Nicholas, you're hired.
Right. I hope he's working with fathers or agencies that are not. He's right.
He's absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So this is open time. We now have about 20 minutes left to talk in discussion before we do our closeout. So please, if you have a question, let's take advantage of the expertise of these fine gentlemen and open up your mic or raise your virtual hand, and we'll do our best to get to you. I'm going to stop sharing, and we'll just get to open everybody up. So if you have a chance or you have a question, this is a really good time to bring it up. Any thoughts? Anybody want to put something in the chat or speak to us? Yes, Jennifer, thank you.
I'll go ahead and start. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer. I am actually a master social work graduate student intern. So I found this training from the agency that I am interning with.
Awesome.
So thank them for that. I just wanted to say to George and Ed, your passion is very fire catching. The work that y'all are doing is amazing. As a student coming into the social working field, I think this subject is not talked about enough in school even, because my experience has been when we're learning different things, it mostly mothers come to mind, right? When we're talking about families and who pretty much everything that y'all are talking about is what I've experienced learning in school. But it is about the kids and it is how to best help them. So I just wanted to thank y'all for this, for your passion, and y'all's conference will definitely come to head. It'll be fantastic and wonderful. I will definitely take everything that y'all said into consideration moving forward in my career and in my internship. I'm actually working with kiddos in this age group right now, and a lot of fathers are absent. So that is some great knowledge for me to take away. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer. You represent the new horizon. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
And
We do have some questions, but I have one in the chat that I wanted to bring up. Can you share those statistics as a resource and conversation starter? And I'm not sure what resources she's talking about, but maybe you have them there.
I have pages and pages of them here that I didn't put in there that are
No,
recent.
you didn't put them in.
No, ma'am.
We can share them if you want to.
Well, I'm trying to find where I got them from.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
but,
Let
I mean,
me.
you can Google fatherhood statistics from different organizations. Some of them will tell you different things. You have to weed through the data because the data can say a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can just Google fatherhood data and all kinds of stuff will come up.
Yeah.
And then
Perfect.
you can just click on it and go through and see how you can use it. I don't use data as much as I used to because I found out that some people don't really trust data, even the sources, or number two, they don't actually tell the whole story. What I tell people is they're markers. When I work with fathers, even in my new job, and I sit down and I talk to even my staff, 80-90% of these guys, and mostly all of them are in recovery, either had a bad relationship with their father or none at all, or he was an addict. No matter where I go, I ask that question. So even for Jennifer, I think her name, ask the question, where is these children's father? And it will tell you a whole lot. Just ask the question. First of all, it will tell you the mother's relationship with the father, which is a big clue to what's going on with it, and that's affecting the child. And number two, it can open the door for conversation to educate. A lot of mothers that are gatekeepers, they don't know the harm it's causing the child. They really don't. They're loving the child. And if the father got some issue, been in jail, or God forbid, got another girl or something on her watch, he's in trouble. But it's the child still wants to know, who's my identity?
Right.
Why wouldn't my father want to know who I am? I used to hear that a lot. Why wouldn't my father want to be involved? What did I do? And see, these questions that don't get answered, they turn into wounds, and then that can turn into bitterness. I've seen it. I'm telling you, I still see it. I've been at this a long time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Edward.
I do want to share fatherhood.gov is a great place for some data and research. Also, the Children's Bureau. But under fatherhood.gov, there's a research and resource tab, and it's library search. If you go to that library search, you can find all kinds of stuff. That's just one of many, but George is right. You could Google stuff. Just Google, fatherhood data, and a lot of different things will come up. But I like this fatherhood.gov.
Great. Thank you. Kyle, you had your hand up next.
Thanks. My name is Kyle Delaney. I actually helped create the fatherhood curriculum for NTAC.
Great.
And now I work as a parenting coordinator at the Department of Corrections here in Rhode Island. I went through the system here and experienced lots of biases and now I'm a sole caretaker for my little girl. I think a lot of this goes back to how we're raised and our perceptions as men, stuff like boys don't cry, never hit a girl, but nobody ever follows that with never let a girl hit you. It's like, we're kind of told in many ways we're second. And for much of my life, I felt that way, that I wasn't as important as a mother. So just really reminding men that they are important. And here, so many of the dads I work with, they're dying to have relationships with their kids, not just as on a personal level, but to help prevent their children from following in those footsteps. And every day I'm talking with caseworkers who have no idea that they can come and do a parent-child visit here. And just reminding that just because the dad's here, in a way, it's actually a great opportunity to help build that bond and stop or slow down intergenerational incarceration and just help the children in so many ways. So there are a lot of resources out there. So many. Thank you both.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. One other comment from this chat is, what about military families? How do you address that issue?
We partner with Veterans Affairs because even in the retreat I was at last week, and 85% of the men were from the military, and I'm not. And so they have a different, and some of them have much deeper levels of trauma that is a barrier more so than even the system and things like that. So I go to the people that have more of an expertise in that area. Now, I have worked with military fathers that are in the system, but once again, I have found out unless you can address, particularly if they have been in war, the post-traumatic stress syndrome phenomenon is real. And so while they might really honestly want to be involved, unless they can get the proper support for their ongoing issues, it's a hindrance. Relationship spirits can be very difficult for them, not just with their kids. So I specifically would say get with the experts and follow their lead.
I totally agree with that. I don't have any military experience. I have worked with military dads involved with the system as well. But I would say look for that person who's had that experience in the military that could offer his perspective and relatability to other fathers in the military.
Very good. Okay, Brian, you're next with your hand up on. There you go.
Yeah, I want to thank you men for the work that you're doing. It's really nice to see a training like this. I see so many trainings at work, all different types, but never hardly see anything for the dads, for the fathers. And I'm a part of a trainer of trainers for a program out of Phoenix. You guys are talking about Phoenix. It's called Fatherhood is Sacred. And I did that training. It's fatherhood and motherhood is sacred because it's for both parents, to understand that concept, and that it takes both of them to raise their kids, raise their child, and the kids need both parents regardless of what they're doing, what happened. They need both of their parents if they're alive, if they're somewhere, in their life. And so everything that you're saying, makes me feel real good for the program that we're doing. I run behavioral health, culture programming, mental health programming, addiction recovery, all from like a Native American traditional based perspective. And so that was part of our teachings, for generations after generations, thousands of years. These are old belief systems that we had a long time ago. And one that you brought up was respect, the parents finding a way to respect each other some way, for the sake of their kids, for the wellness of their kids. And our belief is the next 7 generations, the ones that are coming after us, what can we teach them? What can we pass on? And if you guys do that conference, I'm definitely down. I'll help out. I in any way. I got my shirt on right here. I had a hard time being in my oldest daughter's life, but after she was about 11, 12 years old, and I had to go through a lot, and I stayed in there, stuck with it. And this was a basketball team that I put together for my daughter because she wanted to have a basketball team. And end up, she made all-state. She's an all-state basketball player. We had a team. We went
Wow.
all over, traveled with other girls. I have probably out of 10 girls, I've only
That's
maybe
awesome.
like 6 or 7 didn't even have a dad. You know, a lot of the girls on my team didn't even have dads. So I try to be one of those people on influence in their life. And now my daughter, she went and played basketball in Europe, and she just made a semi-pro basketball team.
Wow.
So, you know, that's what I share, you know, just those stories like that, you know, how we can play some kind of role in there, no matter what anybody has said about you, how anybody talks about you, you know, between you and your ex, or, you know, the baby mama, whatever you want to call her, the mother, you know, and your kid, that's all that matters. You know, one thing that I always try to share with the guys, don't worry about what everybody else says, just between just you guys right here. And so thank you for doing this training. Really glad I was able to find this and be here today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for being here. And that's awesome about your daughter.
Yeah.
I'm a sports fan, so I get that. I totally get that. There's another question in the chat about working with fathers in a transitional aspect coming from incarceration and having to take on full responsibilities of a household.
I believe that incarcerated fathers are underserved in most areas. I was working in the county jail prior to COVID, have not been able to get back in. Matter of fact, they haven't hardly let any providers back in to Allegheny County Jail. And it was some of the greatest work I did, not personally, but the relationships I dealt with those guys, really, because I didn't want to go in jail at first, but nobody would. And I'm like, well, I ain't gonna let the father sit down without services. But one of the things I discovered is the best way to support fathers is to start getting engaged while they're down, while they're in jail. They're a captive audience, and really start to help unwind for them how they got in the situation that they're in. Because so many of them reconciliate, it's like 78% within 2 to 3 years. Number two, how to help them mentally unwind and get a new sense of thinking, then move into things like relationship and parenting. Because unless they change their mindset, they can come out and get involved all they want, and then they'll disappoint the child by going back. The worst thing that happens is fathers, these peekaboo fathers, they come in, they go out, they're called peekaboo fathers. And so I try to, when I work with them, I concentrated on them. And then I looked at trying to provide services for the mother of the children. Often they're getting pressure to put money on these guys' books and hold down the kids. And sometimes the father, if he was selling drugs, was the main source of income. So you got to really, really look at this from a helicopter view on what's the best way to approach it individually, and then develop an action plan along with probation officer, families of origin, and or children's mother, and or the community re-engagement. So it takes a well-rounded approach to help men transition back into, and then they need somewhere stable to go. If they go back to where they came from, the likelihood of them reoffending is much higher.
Yeah. Edward.
You know, it really is the mindset working on the father coming out, because he had to think a certain way for survival. He had to get through what he needed to when he was incarcerated. And we can't expect him to like, okay, you're out. Let's go be a dad now. Let's go get a job. Let's do all this stuff. You know, it's gonna take time for him to acclimate to that. So having those kind of, you know, counseling and support and all of those things, and then have, like, I would say what I've seen work is short-term goals and the long-term goal. The short-term goal is, you know, okay, the next steps, because they want to be in their child's life, they want to be a good dad, but let's address those issues first.
Very good. Thank you. We have just 5 more minutes left. We'll just go with the questions that are up. So Elizabeth, what is your question?
Hi. Okay, just making sure my volume's working. Yes, I joined a little bit late. I wanted to ask, I may have missed it, but I currently I actually am Miss Jennifer's supervisor. So I work out in a rural community, doing mental health consulting for a Head Start and early Head Start programs. And we've this year gotten a lot of single fathers raising babies and fathers who are incarcerated. And the biggest thing that I have dealt with is that I can't relate on that level because I'm not a father and I'm not a male. And I have seen that disconnect being a female and I guess maybe having more of that nurturing side in some ways, or seeing things and trying to get the dad on that same page. And so I wondered if there was any resources or suggestions that you had on how to keep that momentum going and how to show dads that, hey, you're just as important to the child's life and the child's development as mom is. And maybe in some ways more important. Is there any good resources or that I could
So
share?
I know that the industry is sorely lacking in male peer support workers. So how would you, George or Edward, how would you address that?
Bring somebody down there. One of the things people don't want to do is pay for things like this. And I have a consultant business. Is you can go to things on Google all you want. You need what really works is to bring a consultant in, let him start working with the men, identify leaders within that, and then help them to carry the mantle once you leave for their own communities. Number two is look around and see who is of your fathers, who displays leadership qualities that you could bring in and maybe consult with, pay, and or at least advocate for and help them in some way. Then number three is do a geographical scan of what's out there. What I will say is rural areas really struggle because they just don't have a lot of resources. I mean, they just don't. And we in like in the Pittsburgh, we're inundated with stuff and we're still struggling. So God bless you all because it's twice as hard. But you got to get some males, you got to get somebody close to them or around them, or at least somebody they can trust to come in and spend some time with them. And I mean time with them, and then actually go through like a curriculum I'm sure Ed and I have. 24 plus, inside out dads, all these curriculums, they're expensive, but I've been trained in all of them, and they are geared towards fatherhood engagement with longevity. And so it's not an easy answer. You're really going to have to do some consulting, and maybe you be the one to break the ice to do something different.
I hope so. Thank you.
Arturo put in the chat that an uncle, cousin, or good friend of the family can also help the child's upbringing. So those
no
are
question.
good,
We're saying father figures. You're correct. Father figures. As long as the only thing I say is if the father has been identified as somebody who's harmed the child, but it must be on paper. It's not an accusation. A lot of men I work with get PFAs, then they can't go to the house, they can't get their clothes, they can't see their kids, they can't do nothing. Sometimes that goes on for 3 years. And you talk about displacement. Now that doesn't mean he's guilty or not guilty, but when they come to homes and there's a call, the father's going to jail. That's the way it is. That's a whole nother system things. And so again, Lori, that's a whole nother training, how to work with fathers that are in the system, and the system has handcuffed them, and there's nobody to advocate for them. I'll tell you one area that's a need, and that's legal. Poor people don't have no lawyers. Marginal people don't have no lawyers. Women get advocates when they go into court. Men just go in there. That's a whole nother barometer. I'm sure Ed can speak to as well. But we need advocates that know the law. And by the way, there's no fatherhood laws. When a man says, I should have rights, there's no such thing. They're parental rights. they're parental. As a parent, you have rights, and as a mother or father, you have rights. You want to exercise them, but there's no specific laws for just fathers and mothers. It's not true.
Yeah. Edward, can you add to this?
Not much. I think, we're of the same mindset, and we've seen this everywhere. I would just say, Elizabeth, just provide a safe space with consistency. And although you're not a father yourself, you're not a man yourself, I'm sure you have a connection. You had a dad or a brother or something like that. And maybe that would be a way to, if you're comfortable not sharing too much, of course, but to build trust, and just to provide that safe space. I wanted to say that. But this fatherhood work, we all have to be consistent. We all have to believe in it. And we just got to keep moving forward and align yourself, partner yourself with others who believe the same thing you do.
Very good. Thank you, Edward. Jerome, you had your hand up. Do you want to ask a question? We have time for one more.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Jerome Kennard. I am from the Juvenile Welfare Board of Pinellas County here in Florida. I've been recently onboarded here in Pinellas County to work specifically with the Fatherhood program. One of the things that we're doing is that JWB has invested in the Fatherhood program, and part of my task is to kind of mobilize the community, and that's with the service providers and everything. One of the things that we did is to kind of do a collaborative event to kind of introduce other service providers to like-minded providers that serve fathers. So I guess the next task that I'm kind of getting ready to tackle is how do we mobilize this collaborative unit and make it a collective unit before we start attacking big systems like child support, judicial systems, those kind of systems that kind of limit fathers. So I guess my question is, within that strategy, we hired a consultant to kind of do mapping and everything else and kind of look at demographic data of where our providers are at so we can kind of expand this collaborative. How do you mobilize a collective of like-minded agencies to kind of make this thing a bigger deal and get everybody to buy in it?
Well, the first one you said is they got somebody like you, so that's a start. I don't know who I don't know if the consultant is more administrative or more demographic in administration or father person. I don't know that, but that's what. Okay, good. So this is what I say to answer your questions. Number one, when I would go into communities, I've done community mobilization. The first thing I found and looked for was like-minded people. All right. Personally, you need them yourself. You got to get people on your team. They're called fatherhood ambassadors, and then you deputize them without no money. You meet with them and you cast vision. This is very important. This is where we want to go. This is who we want to reach. And these are the things we're trying to address in writing. And then number three, see who you can partner with to move this large vision forward. And then number four, look at what your barriers are. When you do the above things, momentum picks up when people buy in. And when they buy in, the work starts to get done by itself. Then it starts to spread. Now you can go to start and have to meet with judges and caseworkers and people that are in higher policy places. Here's another thing is you need somebody from every sector, not just human service workers. Get a bank person, get a legal person, get a dad or two, get the schools involved. This is another thing. Schools do a poor job of fatherhood engagement. Poor job. Absolutely poor job. Get the schools involved and then find out who the movers and shakers are and have them, foundations and things like that, involved. The sooner the better. And so what you're creating is a vacuum of fatherhood efforts, movements, and energy.
Thank you, George. Edward, any final thoughts?
George is amazing, right? He's amazing. He said everything I wanted to touch on. I just want to thank everybody for being here. It's just a wonderful opportunity to share and spend time with George and you all. And anything we can do to help, please reach out. We'll help you as much as we can.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, George and Edward, for your time and sharing your passion and your experience. We really appreciate you. Somebody was asking for resources. Here are a list of the resources. They're included in your slide deck. So you should be able to see what George used as his resources. There's a curriculum there that NTAC has just put together on fatherhood. It highlights the stories from communities around the country. And then that wellness journal that Ashley presented on at the very beginning, that's also here for your use if you need to use it. So for our next family engagement, we're going to be talking with Jeanette Bocanegra about tools to survive the juvenile justice system. And we had her as a speaker last year at our Parent Peer Support Institute, and it was fantastic. She's a wonderful presenter. She's full of energy and full of great thoughts and great experience and great knowledge. So if you're here today, you've been registered for the whole series of them, but please feel free to share this registration link with other people, anybody who you think would be interested in coming to Family Exchange. Again, this is from the very beginning, so if you missed the beginning, we will provide a certificate. You'll get a copy of the presentation, and it is recorded, and you can go to the website here at NTAC Mental Health Resources and find it there. We need to hear from you on a little bit of a survey. It's 4 or 5 questions. It's not long. It takes a few minutes, but it really does help us know that we're in the right ballpark with the people who are coming here. So please take a minute to fill out the survey. And then here are all of the ways to stay connected with NTAC, with all of their social media connections. And then here's the way to be in contact with them. If you need any further technical assistance, they're more than happy to put you in touch with the right people on their team who are willing to do that. Again, a big shout out and thank you to George and Edward for your time and efforts today. Can't tell you how much I appreciate you, and we will see you all next month at the next one. It's always on the last Wednesday of the month, so it's the 28th of February. Okay, have a great rest of your month, and we'll see you next time. Okay,
Goodbye.
bye.
Thank you, Lori. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.